So you see, South Africa, a heavily industrialized nation, which had the potential of benefiting from this de-risking from China by global multinationals. However, the capital is Western capital, and right now in this sort of like Third World War or Cold War or the new Cold War, countries that are aligned to Russia and China are very risky for global capital. However, South Africa is an industrialized nation could have benefited from that geographical diversification, but we see that the ANC's insistence on supporting Vladimir Putin because of the corrupt relationship between the ANC and and the Russians has led to this problem of ESCOM power cuts that is further exacerbating the problem, meaning that the industrial drive in South Africa is going to be slower, the industry will shrink. At the same time, the geopolitical positioning of the South African government is not favorable for global capital, yet global capital does need to diversify geographically its manufacturing hub by also including Southern Africa. We've got resources in DRC, in Zambia, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, Botswana. So you need some kind of industrialized hub in the region. And so I am taking South Africa out of that picture, even as we see United States pushing strong on cutting its support of South Africa through AGOA and thinking hard about some kind of punitive measures to place on Pretoria because of their insistence on supporting Vladimir Putin in a time like this when we have got this new Cold War. Which brings me to that point of saying that in this region, it is imperative for global capital to find a hub for industrialization, and the best country that is will be really positioned very well to take that role is Zimbabwe. So I say that all the factors that are necessary for that to occur are present in Zimbabwe, except for one, which is a political risk owing to our national leadership, Emerson Mnangagwa and ZANU PF, also being uh, under uh, the auspices of the Russians and therefore engaged in activities that are dire to the survival of the European economy through that siphoning of Zimbabwean resources to Russia, and Russia using the proceeds to launch a war against Europe. However, at the same time, so you see now the interest of global capital in the region has been very much highlighted, and therefore the only thing that needs to happen in Zimbabwe is for the elimination of ZANU-PF so that Zimbabwe can be led by a government that respects the rule of law and respects property rights to accept foreign investments so that foreign investments, long term foreign investments, can feel safe in Zimbabwe. Imagine companies like Telsa building battery manufacturing uh, factories in Zimbabwe because we already have lithium in the country. Imagine uh, companies like Apple building or rather manufacturing iPhones in Zimbabwe, and imagine other big manufacturing companies that want to distribute to the world, especially those that need industries from the mining industry and agricultural industry. So you see, Zimbabwe is a perfect place. We've got a perfect climate. We've got massive land available. We have got a population that, thanks to Robert Mugabe's drive, education drive, our people are educated enough. The literate rate in Zimbabwe is amongst the highest in Africa, and skills development in Zimbabwe is amongst the highest in Africa, not because of locally developed skills, but also skills developed in countries all over the world where Zimbabweans have gone to, especially in the United Kingdom and the United States, where there's a lot of Zimbabweans that have studied. So there's an overcapacity. There's overcapacity in the supply of Zimbabwean-born labor, or including Zimbabwean migrants all over the world. So you can see that a functioning state, therefore, after we remove ZANU-PF from power, will leverage on all of those resources that I have been speaking about, all of these advantages, and will lead to a Zimbabwe that is able to take the resources from Zimbabwe and the region and to add value to them, use our labor resources in Zimbabwe and outside Zimbabwe to diversify our economy and become that major player in the global supply chain, since the South Africans are abdicating that role. Therefore, it elevates us not only in industry but also in politics. When we talk about the regional power and the regional politics, I envision a Zimbabwe that is able to take over that role and be uh, that powerhouse in the region, so that financial powerhouse, so that we can be the ones who drive the financial growth of even the countries that are around our region. They really become our satellite countries because of the move that we would have done as Zimbabwe to remove Idi Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF from power, so that Zimbabwe, for the first time in their lives, they can experience an impressive economic growth, justified by all the things that I've said before. But all those things cannot happen as long as ED 2030 vision is in place, because we do know right now that the 2030 vision is a lie. We now know, looking at South Africa's ANC, looking at what's happening in the Central African Republic, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Chad, all of these countries where we see there's this Wagner group and Russian influence. We see that the politics of those countries and those politicians that are aligned to Vladimir Putin is all about corruption and taking property rights, individual rights of people of their own populations, in order to feed their superpower, which is Russia, because the hungry Russian superpower is greedy to collect as much as they can from its colonies. And Zimbabwe is a colony of Russia. South Africa is getting to become one, is being stolen by the Russians under the nose of the Americans. That is why you see all this attack coming to South Africa, because of ally their, their ally Russia, when the South African economy actually depends on Europe and the United States. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, has not developed such trade relationships with Europe and the United States, but right now sits in a position whereby we can do that. If we remove Idi Mnangagwa from power, the industrialization that you see in South Africa is going to happen in Zimbabwe on a much higher scale, because we will be a government that does the right thing. That is why I am campaigning to become the next leader to take over Emerson Mnangagwa and Nelson Chamisa, who actually Nelson Chamisa, I am accusing him of being part of the same mafia that Emerson Mnangagwa is part of. In Triple C and the lawyers are actually holding our revolution captive by making it appear as if Chamisa intends to remove ZANU-PF from power, when in actual fact he is buying time and deceiving the Zimbabweans. For that reason, I am eliminating him from the political race, him and Emerson Mnangagwa and MDC and all the other small political parties that ZANU-PF is planting all over the place, confusing people to make it look as if there's democracy in the country, when in actual fact it's just an authoritarian regime that is sponsored by Russian oligarchs for the purposes of siphoning our wealth and shipping it to Russia, so that Russia and China can wage this war against the Europeans. My name is Ngubani Zondo. I hope as Zimbabweans we really rethink our strategy as a nation and begin to rally around a political candidate that is ready to take Zimbabwe to the top, to take Zimbabwe to the world, not to keep Zimbabwe in the doldrums of poverty. My economic policy will be able to drive poverty out of Zimbabwe and implement changes in our political system, in our financial system that will be able to attract long term foreign investment, long term investments that will invest in industrialization, diversification of our economy, and that will increase labor force participation, reduce unemployment rate, just have a central bank that's able to stabilize our inflation rate by closing the tap on the thieves that raid our reserve bank, and have a proper functioning reserve bank that will reduce unemployment and keep inflation stable, perhaps at around 2%, so that the purchasing power of our people is not eroded. As the ZANU-PF regime has been uh, running the country solely for the purposes of eroding the earning capacity and the purchasing power of the people of Zimbabwe, so that they can siphon it to themselves, those who are linked to the president, and this group of people that we call the gold mafia. Nevertheless, since they are Zimbabweans, we need to move to a place where, if they are cooperative, we can be able to find each other in time and be able to create a space that works for everybody else. But if they are not cooperative, I am afraid that due to the reasons, or owing to the reasons that I have outlined, the superpower and the capital of the superpower will have to go ahead and turn Zimbabwe in what Zimbabwe needs to be, with or without the cooperation of ZANU-PF. So the ZANU-PF elite now must see that we are now at a crossroads, people. We are now at the crossroads where ZANU-PF has to make a decision to work with us and create a better future and be able to and be safe from persecution, or to carry on being arrogant and carry on destroying Zimbabwe, but face the wrath of the superpower as it comes to fight Russia in South Africa and Russia in the rest of Africa, including Zimbabwe. And when the Western powers are fighting Russia in Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa and the elite in Harare will not be able to survive that. And as I've been saying before, that the sovereignty that Zimbabwe enjoying, it is actually enjoying at the expense of the superpower. Without the willingness of the superpower, there will be no sovereignty. And Putin can be taken out of Zimbabwe in no time, including ZANU-PF, and the ZANU-PF comrades will find themselves in trouble, perhaps even in jail. Imagine the international law, the crimes that Idi Mnangagwa and his cronies have committed, from Gugura Honde up to now, financial crime, illicit financial flow, money laundering, all sorts of contravening so many acts, global law, that they will not be able to withstand it. That is why my recommendation is that ZANU-PF to move quickly and put a new government led by me, Ngobani Zondo, that will be able to turn the country around before the global war comes to Zimbabwe. Because if they don't do that and the global war comes to Zimbabwe, empty Idi Mnangagwa will be out of power, and the rest of the ZANU-PF elite will be out of power, and the judgment that's going to come from the international community will be so dire that they will not be able to withstand it, and they will not be able to run away from it, because there is no country or place left in the earth where they can go and hide from the superpower. Because if the superpower fights Russia in the United States, fight Russia and China, there will be no place to hide for Idi Mnangagwa and his friends. The only place to hide is the word of God. The word of God is to move, therefore, and form a new government with me that is pro-Western, that will reform and do the right things, and perhaps sanctions will be dropped, and perhaps that's the only way you can survive. Failure to do that, continuing on with the arrogance of saying, Are ani uyundiani, who's this Ndebele boy to tell us what to do? Well. A time is coming when you will look for me when trouble comes from the Americans. Holy is God. In Harare, they think right. Have a good evening.